By the time the letter arrived, Emma Carter had already learned not to expect good news. She was 11, but life had aged her faster than any birthday ever could. Bills, eviction notices, the quiet way adults avoided looking at her and her little sister. Those things had become normal. Lily, 8 years old, still believed things might somehow work out. She still asked questions. Emma had stopped. The envelope was thin, official-looking, with their last name typed neatly on the front. No return address that meant anything to them. Emma opened it slowly, Lily hovering close, her small fingers clutching the sleeve of Emma's worn jacket. "You've inherited a property," the letter said. Emma read it twice, then a third time. A property. That word didn't belong to them. It belonged to other people. People with steady jobs, warm houses, and parents who came home at night. "What is it?" Lily asked, hopeful and nervous all at once. Emma swallowed. "A cabin." Lily's eyes lit up. "Like a real house?" Emma hesitated. "Sort of." The address led them far out of town, past the last paved road, past places where cell service died and the world went quiet. When they finally reached it, Lily's excitement faded. The cabin wasn't really a cabin. It sat half hidden inside ancient stone ruins. Collapsed walls, weathered rock, and silence thick enough to press against the ears. It looked forgotten, abandoned, like something no one had wanted for a very long time. Neighbors from the nearby valley didn't bother hiding their reactions. "You can't raise kids out there. That place won't last one winter. Those ruins are dangerous." Emma heard every word. She always did. Her jaw tightened, her shoulders squared. Defensive, determined, exhausted. She had learned to look stronger than she felt. Lily stayed close, her eyes wide, her breath fogging in the cold air. "It's scary," she whispered. Emma nodded, though she was scared too. But when she stepped inside, something unexpected happened. The wind howled outside, sharp and biting. Inside, it softened. The stone walls, thick, old, deliberate, blocked the worst of it. The air felt different, still, almost protective. Emma didn't have the words for it yet. She only knew this. The place felt like it was holding them. She looked down at Lily, who had wrapped her arms around herself, then leaned into Emma's side. "Do you think we can stay?" Lily asked quietly. Emma looked around again, at the stone, the shadows, the strange sense of shelter. "I don't know," she said honestly. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't say no. The first night was colder than Emma expected. Not the kind of cold that bites all at once, but the slow, creeping kind. The kind that slips under your clothes, settles into your bones, and refuses to leave. Outside, the wind swept through the ruins with a low, restless moan, rattling loose stones and whispering through cracks that had been there longer than either girl had been alive. Lily tried to be brave, she always did. She sat on their thin blankets, knees pulled to her chest, pretending she wasn't shaking. "It sounds like the walls are talking," she said, forcing a small smile. Emma managed one back. "They're just old." But even as she said it, she listened harder. The walls didn't sound empty. They sounded awake. The next morning, Emma walked down to the valley to ask about work. She needed firewood, food, anything she could trade for. The reactions came fast and careless. "Those ruins," a man scoffed. "They'll freeze before Thanksgiving." "Kids don't belong up there," another muttered. One woman shook her head. "Someone should call child services." Emma kept her face steady, but every word landed heavy. She'd heard that tone before, the judgment wrapped in concern, the pity sharpened into something cruel. When she returned, Lily was sitting just inside the stone walls, holding a chipped mug of warm water between her hands. "It's weird," Lily said. "It's not as cold in here." Emma noticed it too. The sun had been out for only an hour, but the stone along the south-facing opening felt faintly warm to the touch. The wind slammed hard against the outside walls, yet inside it dulled, like the ruins were taking the hit for them. That night, the temperature dropped fast. Frost crept across the ground. The sky turned hard and clear, stars sharp as broken glass. Emma fed their small fire sparingly, terrified of running out too soon. She wrapped Lily in her own jacket and pulled her close, their breaths fogging the air between them. "I don't want to go back down there," Lily whispered. "They look at us like we're already gone." Emma held her tighter, her jaw clenched, heart pounding. She didn't trust the quiet. She didn't trust hope. And yet, the wind howled. The cold pressed in, but the stone held. The walls stayed solid, the air stayed bearable. Lily's shivering slowed, then stopped. Her breathing softened against Emma's shoulder. Emma stayed awake all night, listening, waiting for the cold to win. It didn't. By morning, snow dusted the ruins like a warning. Winter was coming faster than anyone had said. And for the first time, Emma realized something unsettling and strange. The place everyone laughed at might be the only thing standing between them and the cold that was about to take everything. The storm didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, the way dangerous things often do. The sky turned the color of old steel, low and heavy. By late afternoon, the wind shifted. Sharper now, colder, carrying something that made Emma's stomach tighten. Snow began as a fine dust, barely noticeable, then thickened into steady white sheets that erased the world beyond the ruins. By nightfall, the mountain was gone. No valley lights, no trails, just wind, snow, and darkness pressing in from every side. Emma fed the fire, her hands stiff and aching, counting every piece of wood. Too much, and they'd have nothing by morning. Too little, and Lily would freeze. The math felt cruel and impossible. The temperature dropped fast. Lily sat beside her, wrapped in layers, her small body trembling despite the blankets. "Emma, I'm really cold," she whispered. Fear surged hard and sharp. Emma pulled her closer, rubbing Lily's arms, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. She pressed her forehead to Lily's hair, breathing in the familiar scent, dust, soap, childhood, and begged the night to give them a chance. Outside, the wind screamed. It slammed into the ruins again and again, rattling loose stones, howling through gaps. But something strange happened. The force of it broke against the thick walls. The sound dulled. The violence softened. Inside, the air held. The stone beneath Emma's back felt solid. Cold, yes, but steady. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the space around them stopped getting colder. The fire's weak heat didn't vanish into the night. It lingered. Lily shifted. "I don't feel as cold anymore." Emma froze. She held her breath, listening, not to the storm, but to Lily's body. The shaking eased. Lily's fingers unclenched from Emma's sleeve. Hours dragged on. Emma didn't sleep. She couldn't. She watched the walls, the shadows, the fire's low glow reflected in ancient stone. She waited for the cold to come roaring back, to prove this was all a lie. It never did. By dawn, the storm had buried the ruins in white. Snow piled high against the outer walls, sealing cracks, thickening the barrier. The cabin felt quieter, warmer. Lily slept, her face relaxed for the first time in days. Emma sat there exhausted, stunned, heart pounding with a realization she wasn't ready to say out loud. The place everyone had dismissed as a death trap had just carried them through the coldest night yet. And winter was only getting started. The storm passed the way it had come, without apology. Morning arrived pale and silent. Snow lay thick over the ruins, smoothing jagged edges, bearing the broken ground beneath a clean, dangerous calm. Emma stepped outside carefully, her boots sinking deep with every step. The world looked erased. Down in the valley, people had felt the storm too. But up here, it had rewritten everything. By mid-morning, figures appeared on the ridge. Two men from the valley, bundled in heavy coats, moving slow and cautious. They'd come expecting the worst. Emma saw it in their faces before they said a word. "You girls okay?" one asked, stunned. Emma nodded. Her voice came out steady, even though her legs still shook. "We're alive." They stepped inside the ruins and felt quiet. The air was noticeably warmer than outside. Not warm, just survivable. One of the men pressed a hand against the stone wall, frowning. "That doesn't make sense," he muttered. An older man joined them later, a lifelong mountain local with a weathered face and knowing eyes. He walked the perimeter slowly, studying the walls, the way the structure leaned into the ruins instead of standing apart from them. "These stones weren't stacked by accident," he said finally. "Someone knew what they were doing." Emma listened closely. He explained how the walls blocked the north wind, how the south-facing opening trapped the low winter sun, how snow piled against the outer stone, sealing gaps and holding heat inside. Old methods, forgotten ones. "People used to build like this," he said, "back when survival mattered more than looks." That afternoon, Emma explored the ruins with new eyes. She noticed things she'd missed before. The deliberate thickness of certain walls, the way the floor dipped slightly to block drafts, the careful placement of stone that guided wind away instead of inviting it in. This place wasn't just shelter. It was knowledge. That night, Emma sat beside Lily, who traced patterns in the frost on the stone with her finger. "The house kept us safe," Lily said softly. Emma nodded. "Yeah, it did." For the first time, she didn't feel like they were hiding. She felt like they had been left something. Something meant to last. Outside, winter waited, patient and relentless. But inside the ruins, Emma understood the truth everyone else had missed. The cabin wasn't defying the mountain. It was listening to it. And that might be the reason they were still alive. Spring didn't arrive all at once. Up in the ruins, it came slowly, measured in softer mornings, longer light, and the sound of water running again beneath the snow. Emma noticed the changes before Lily did. The way the cold loosened its grip. The way the stone walls felt less harsh, less forbidding. They had survived the worst of winter together, not because they were lucky, but because the place had been built to hold on. Word spread through the valley. People who once laughed now stopped by with cautious kindness. Firewood left quietly near the path. A sack of groceries, extra blankets. No speeches, no apologies. Just help. Emma didn't ask for it, but she didn't refuse either. Lily changed the most. She slept through the night now. She laughed again, the sound light and unguarded. One afternoon, she pressed her cheek against the stone wall and smiled. "It's warm," she said, "like it remembers us." Emma understood exactly what she meant. She spent her days learning, really learning, how the place worked, how the walls trapped heat, how the wind moved around the structure instead of through it, how the mountain gave back when you stopped trying to fight it. This wasn't just a cabin inside ruins. It was a lesson. About listening, about patience, about survival that didn't require hardening your heart. On the last cold night of the season, Emma sat at the doorway and looked out over the valley lights below. She thought about everything they had almost lost, about how close the cold had come to taking her sister, about how easily this story could have ended differently. And she thought about what it meant that it didn't. Lily curled up beside her, wrapped in a blanket too big for her. "Do you think we were supposed to find this place?" she asked. Emma didn't answer right away. "I think," she said slowly, "someone built it so someone like us could make it through." The mountain stayed quiet. The stones stayed steady. Some places aren't meant to impress. They're meant to protect. And sometimes the thing that saves you isn't new or beautiful. It's old, overlooked, and waiting for someone who needs it. So here's the question for you. If you were Emma, would you have stayed, or would you have walked away from the place everyone else said wasn't worth saving? And how many times in life do we overlook the very thing that could carry us through our hardest winter? If this story moved you, if it made you stop and think, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because some stories aren't just meant to be watched. They're meant to stay with you.